Hey everyone, and welcome to your weekly video. I'm sitting in my classroom, so I hope the view is okay. I know you can just see the top portion of my head, but I have my chair jacked up as high as I can get it. So hopefully you can see me okay. But I'll mostly be doing some screen sharing during this video because what I wanted to talk about were your textbook readings for this week, chapter 1 and chapter 3 from Successful College Composition. And I wanted to also quickly show you how to turn in your Generating Ideas assignment, which will also be due next week. So let me screen share and we'll take a peek. Now, if you're in my night class, this blackboard might look slightly different as far as the colors and due dates, but all the principles of what I'm talking about are going to remain exactly the same. So just as a quick reminder of how you can see what we're up to for the week, if you go to the learning modules area and then click into the current learning module, you'll find that Unit 1 overview. So again, depending which class you're in, it might look slightly different from what I'm showing you here, but we all have these same assignments, maybe just slightly different due dates. So hopefully you read chapter 1, the introduction to writing, and chapter 3, rhetorical modes narration. And what I'm going to do is just take you through some key takeaways from those chapters. So I have my textbook open over here, and as I was working, taking notes, I just had a separate tab open and was working in a Google Doc. When I was done with my notes, I transferred them over to a Google slide for you. So that's just an example of how you might choose to read and take notes with your textbooks, since they are available online digitally. It might be a good idea to take your notes digitally. And in fact, it might make it easier for certain copying and pasting certain elements. So keep that in mind. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was chapter 1, which was the introduction to writing. So you can access that just by scrolling through your textbook to the page number I give you in the unit overview document, or you can use the table of contents to navigate quickly to whichever item it is that you're needing to read. Now, you need to read these chapters very thoroughly on your own because I'm not going to go over all these elements in these videos. It would take forever and it would just be a waste of everybody's time. So if you haven't done that yet, please do make sure that you read these chapters very thoroughly. But what I wanted to highlight in this video are just some key takeaways. So let's start with chapter 1, which is the introduction to writing. Let me back up here. There we go. Chapter 1, the introduction to writing. So the chapter, I think, actually does an exceptional job giving you all the information you need to know to write a successful college composition, just like the title of the textbook says. And what I've done is pulled out some key takeaways. So these are just kind of some overall looks or overall takeaways from essay writing in college. So number 1, the content of each paragraph in an essay is shaped by purpose, audience, and tone. So those are 3 elements we're going to talk about quite a bit this semester. What is our purpose for writing? Who is our audience? And how do we craft a tone that sort of marries those 2 things together? There are 4 common purposes in academic writing: summary, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And we'll be doing all those this semester, even if we don't necessarily call them by those names. Now, something else that can be important for your audience is identifying their demographics. So whatever it is that you're writing about, you're going to want to keep in mind who these people are and what their background knowledge is, right? What do they already know that you don't need to repeat? And what information do you need to provide? Now, certainly in writing, devices such as sentence structure, word choice, punctuation, formal and informal language sort of create a relationship between the writer and their audience. So we always want to be very thoughtful about how we're crafting our words this semester. Typically in academic writing, content might consist of examples, facts, statistics, anecdotes, testimonies, observations. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that content is appropriate and interesting for the audience and has an appropriate purpose and tone. Now, the next section in your chapter mentions sources. And the only thing I want to say to you about sources right now is you don't need to worry about it. We will get there, okay? But for essay 1, you are your own source. Something that's really important in our essays this semester, and that I would encourage you to use in almost any piece of writing, is what we would call a thesis statement. So many of you are probably familiar with a thesis statement. That's that sentence, usually in the introductory paragraph, that previews or captures the main idea of your essay. And it is very difficult for an essay to be successful without a thesis statement. And I think the qualities that our textbook identifies as sort of key to thesis statements are right on point. So what are we looking for in your thesis statements? Number one, thesis statements should almost always, if not always, be arguable. Okay, it needs to state a point of view, a judgment about that topic. If you're just stating an established fact, that's not arguable. So for example, I had a student once asked to write an essay about hybrid cars versus gasoline cars. And his thesis statement was something along the lines of electric cars are electric and gas cars run on gas. That's not really telling us anything though, right? That's not arguable. So I encouraged that student to choose which car was better. And the thesis statement ended up being arguable, saying that electric cars are better for the environment than a gas-powered car. Now, your thesis statement for your personal statement essay is probably going to be arguable by nature because you're arguing that you deserve this scholarship. Or you might be arguing that you learned something about yourself at a certain point. So this arguability becomes more important in subsequent essays, but you can certainly start to think about it for a narrative essay as well. Something else very important about thesis statements is that they must be supportable. So in other words, you need to give a point of view that can be supported with evidence, right? With reasons, with facts, with opinions, with examples, okay? A thesis statement that has no evidence to back it up is just not a strong thesis statement. Finally, a thesis statement should be specific. So it should be precise enough to allow for a coherent argument, and it should remain focused on the topic. So in general, a very broad thesis statement is not what we would be looking for. We would be looking for something very specific. So it's maybe for your personal statement essay, it's not just that you deserve a scholarship, but you deserve this scholarship for these particular reasons. Okay. Now I did point out on this slide, and I'll encourage you also as well to read the examples of weak thesis statements that they give in the textbook, because they are exactly what I commonly see in student work. And it's just a good heads up to you of kind of some framings to avoid. One in particular I would urge you to avoid in all academic writing is that kind of announcement of intent that many writers give in their essays. So those are statements that sound something like, in this essay I will. I am going to argue. I think, I believe, statements like that. Those often create weak thesis statements. Proper essays do usually need a thesis statement to give a focus, and they also preview how the essay will be organized, okay? The thesis statement offers your interpretation of the subject, not necessarily the topic itself, but what your viewpoint on the topic is, right? A strong thesis statement is specific, precise, forceful, confident, and able to be demonstrated. You'll hear me say repeatedly this semester that I'm urging you to stay away from the statements I think and I feel. There's certainly nothing wrong with thinking and feeling, right? We want to think and feel. But when it comes to making academic arguments, those types of statements tend to weaken what we're saying because it sounds like it's just my opinion, right? I think that book was excellent, right? We can still make the argument, the book was excellent, without having to put that I think before it. So I'm going to urge you towards a little more sophisticated framing for your arguments. A strong thesis statement, as I mentioned before, is debatable and supported with evidence. And a weak thesis statement just declares your topic or sort of contains an obvious fact. Finally, the last bullet point here, I think, is a fabulous plan for revising thesis statements, which is by ensuring that all your words are specific, your ideas are exact, and your verbs express action. So when you get down to that sentence level revision on your essay, that might be one way to consider your thesis statement again. Now, the next section of this chapter in your textbook talks about organization. You want to be very thoughtful about organizing your essay in a way your reader will understand. Now, it seems pretty simple that in a personal statement that you would just use chronological order and it would be pretty simple for your readers. And I encourage you to do that. But you always want to keep your reader in mind, because just because something makes sense to us doesn't mean it's going to make sense to someone else. So that's where that peer review process comes into play. A strong organizational pattern allows you to articulate your ideas better. And it also helps you sort of search for supporting evidence, because you have planned out sort of your plan of attack for the essay. As I mentioned before, chronological order is very common in expository writing, so I would definitely encourage you to use that for the personal narrative essay. Spatial order, I don't think would work as well with this, but you certainly might want to try if that works for your essay. Now, when it comes to writing paragraphs, and again, all these things we'll talk about more during the semester, but this was just a brief overview from this textbook. And when we talk about writing paragraphs, first of all, I wanted to point out on page 26, for anybody who has trouble drafting paragraphs, there's a really useful template that you can use. So maybe consider that. A paragraph often contains 3 distinct components, and I would like you to include these components in your paragraphs this semester. So we need a topic sentence, a body, and a concluding sentence in that paragraph, okay? Your topic sentence you can think of as sort of a mini thesis statement, right? It expresses the main idea of the paragraph, okay? They're typically limited, they're general enough to cover supporting sentences and limited enough to be, developed well. They're clear and easy to follow. They're usually explicit. So I would encourage you to write, a really explicit topic sentence for each of your paragraphs. But as it says in your textbook and here, often in informative or sort of personal narrative essays, they are implied. I'm sorry, I should have said in narrative and descriptive writing like we're doing right now for the personal essay, they are sometimes implied. In most academic essays, as it says here in the first bullet point, the topic sentence is the first sentence of the paragraph. And again, that's my kind of default to encourage you to place that topic sentence as your first sentence. Here's a writing tip for you for your thesis statements as well. Once you have all of your topic sentences figured out, that makes it much easier to go back and create a thesis statement. So if you get stuck on that thesis statement piece and you're not sure how to frame all those main ideas, figure out your topic sentences first, pluck the main idea from each topic sentence, and then write one sentence that encompasses them all to become your thesis statement. So that's just a little tip for you. So you start your paragraph with your topic sentence. Next, we have our supporting sentences that are going to help prove that claim that you made in the topic sentence. So they oftentimes will offer examples, quotations, statistics, some type of evidence, and it depends what type of essay you're writing. If it's a research paper, it's probably going to be academic sources. For the narrative essay, for the personal statement you're writing for this unit, you're most likely going to be using sort of details and stories and anecdotes from your own life to help develop those ideas. So again, just as we want to use transitional words and phrases throughout our entire essay, we'll also use them within paragraphs to guide our reader through our ideas. And we would also, we do like to see a concluding sentence in each paragraph. So that wraps up your main ideas. It helps keep your ideas organized, and oftentimes it sets you up to transition to the next paragraph. And then finally, repetition of keywords help keeps paragraphs focused and coherent. So words, keywords that are mentioned in your thesis statement, we're probably going to be hearing them echoed throughout your paragraphs as well. And that makes your essay really feel like it all hangs together really nicely. So here's a basic essay format I would like you to use for all of your essays in English 1001 this semester. So this is the minimum, right? This is the most basic version of your essay. And I hope that by the end of the semester, we're all able to break out of this 5-paragraph mode and go a little bit beyond it. But here's what I hope to see from each of you. An introductory paragraph featuring a thesis statement that usually appears as its last sentence. You need to give me 3 body paragraphs that use topic sentences and evidence and analysis. Or you might also think of that as a topic sentence paired with details and explanations, okay, that help develop their ideas. And then the last thing we should see is a conclusion paragraph that reviews your main ideas in your thesis. It wraps up all the ideas of the essay and it ends on a powerful or memorable line. So this is a really important piece to keep in mind. If I receive an essay that is fewer than 5 paragraphs, it would be very difficult for that essay to earn a passing grade. So just keep that in mind. If you would like to pause right here, this might be a good place to take a break, and then we'll jump into a shorter chapter on narration. So narration is the art of storytelling. It's one of the reasons I love opening up with this assignment in Comp 1, because it gives my students a chance to tell their stories, maybe in a way that they haven't before. So your personal statement is essentially a story about you. Now, as I mentioned before, most writers do prefer chronological order to organize a narrative essay or a personal statement. So I would strongly encourage you to use that as well. Now, your textbook spends some time, and I think it's quite interesting, discussing whether a personal narrative essay or a personal statement essay should be fact or fiction. So here's my thoughts. For my class, it does not really matter. I'm not going to fact check you. I'm not going to, chase down your friends and family and ask them if this event really happened in the way that you claim. For my purposes, it doesn't really matter. So if you want to embellish a little bit, if you want to invent a little bit, I encourage you to do that, as long as you're sticking, to the parameters of the assignment. Now, of course, in real life, it could matter a lot. If you are applying for a scholarship and you lied on that scholarship essay, that could come back to bite you in a major way. If you lied on a statement on a job application, that could come back to bite you in a major way. So do be careful and thoughtful about when and how you're embellishing the personal stories you tell. Now, I did want to point out on page 90 of the narration chapter of chapter 3, there's a list of useful transitional words and phrases. So if you didn't take a peek at that, go ahead and take a look. And I think those would be useful for many of you to use in your essay to kind of guide your reader through your work. There's also an example on page 92 that shows how personal statements can be really creative. So I encourage you to read that sample essay that's included. You'll notice it's actually based from an identical prompt to the one that is seen on our assignment sheet for this assignment. So I think it's a fabulous example of how you can write, a personal statement and sort of stretch your creative wings and not fall into the really boring trap of, hi, my name is Nora and I'm applying for such and such scholarship. I can tell you that 99% of people who write such an essay have an urge to start them that way. So I think the one in the book is a good example of how to stay away from that pitfall. So if you have any questions at all about anything from chapter 1 or chapter 3, please do let me know. Again, keep in mind that I want you to read those really thoroughly because they have a lot of great information, and ask me any questions that you may have. The last thing I wanted to show you in this weekly video is how to turn in your generating ideas assignment, okay? Now, again, your Blackboard might look slightly different depending which section you're in, but the principle behind it is going to be exactly the same, okay? So you'll notice on your Unit 1 overview, we have a generating ideas assignment coming up. When you're ready to work on that and turn it in, you'll notice that I came into the learning module again. That's where you're going to usually find your work for the unit. I have the directions here for how to generate ideas for essay 1. So I'm not going to read this assignment sheet to you. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I just basically ask you to do a little free writing about a few ideas and then post it to Blackboard. What might be a little bit different or confusing and that I wanted to show you is that this assignment is going to be submitted on the discussion board. The idea generation and the peer review assignments for this class will always be completed on discussion boards, just because that gives us a really great opportunity to talk, whether it's in person or virtually. So when you're ready to hand in your generating ideas assignment, this is just going to open up the assignment sheet itself. The assignment sheet will direct you to visit your writing group. Here's the link for writing group Unit 1. You'll just simply click into whichever group you enrolled in, whether it was the in-person group or the Zoom group, they're going to be identical. Once you're in your writing group, here's the list of everyone else that's in your group, so you can see all your members. And beneath it, we have our group tools. So the one I'm going to jump into is our discussion board. You should see that I already have them set up for you. And again, your due dates might look different, but the principle is the same. When you're ready to hand in this assignment, all you'll need to do is click into the appropriate discussion board forum, create a new thread, go ahead and title it with your name, maybe the title of the assignment, I'll put generating ideas. And then typically what's going to happen is you're going to browse for the file that you have saved, double click to upload it, and then simply click submit, and you'll be all set to go. So if you have any questions about how to submit that generating ideas assignment, just let me know. But again, your one-stop shop for everything this semester is going to be in this learning module. So when you're not sure where to find something, or if you have a question, jump into the learning module, and I hope that you can find it there. So I think that's enough for this week's video. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please contact me, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks.